in Wargaming's infinite wisdom, they came about nerfing the T-54E1. I have no idea what they were doing, but let's do a quick comparison between the tech tree version of the Tier 9 autoloading American tank, heavy tank that is, because this one was changed from a medium to a heavy tank, and slight things were changed, including the accuracy of the tank, including the armor model, so it's more in line with a heavy, but we're going to see how that is completely not the case, other than the fact that this now goes a lot slower. You've got a top speed limit of 38 kilometers an hour in this heavy tank that also gets a really fantastic amount of armor. Oh, it gets 108 millimeters on the turret and 88 millimeters on the turret, and the cheeks 69 millimeters. Oh well, the hull's got to be good, right? What? It's green. 88 millimeters, 76 millimeters. Oh well, it must be able to shift. Oh wait, no, sorry, 38 kilometers an hour. I said that earlier. Well, it must have DPM then, of course, because it has to have something. 2,656 fully specced out in an entire DPM build. It's not the worst for a Tier 9, but it's not very good, and it also has an autoloader. So it's got a 4-shot autoloader. Oh, it can deal 1,460 damage in an entire clip. Wow, that's actually pretty good. Penetration also got buffed, so it can now penetrate things, because a tank at Tier 9 should be able to pen things anyway, but regardless, it's now got 248mm of penetration on its standard rounds, which you can pretty much use anyway, and then the premium rounds of course get 310mm, which means you can go through the front of most heavy tanks. Now that's one good thing, and that's about it. Now, let's do a quick comparison between the T-54E1 tech tree, you don't have to pay for it version, and the Cobra T-54. Cobra T-54, instantly you can see, oh, it's got 1800 hit points compared to 1850, so that's kind of a negative. I mean, it can withstand like 50 hit points less damage. I mean, it is what it is. Oh, it goes 45 kilometers an hour. But wait. That's when it's in the targeting mode. It gets an overboosted engine. Okay, so this tank's extremely fast. It must sacrifice the armor, right? Wait a minute, what? The turret armor of the premium version has like 200mm, and it's sloped as well, so it's probably more like 300. Yeah, but it has the big cupola on the top, so obviously people can hit that. But the cupola has more armor than the T-54E1's actual turret. This is starting to get a little bit worrying for the T-54E1. It was already terrible. Oh, so the T-54E1. Oh, it has way more vision range, 523 meters, so it must be able to spot for itself. You'd be right, it can spot for itself. That's of course with coated optics and a commander, and the Cobra T-54 468. But remember, let's swap the commander over and see whether it really makes that much of a difference between the two. Oh, no, the vision range is exactly the same between the two vehicles. Bearing in mind, it's still concealment of the other vehicle. The T-54E1 is slightly better, so you may be able to outspot opponents just a little bit better. But remember, the Cobra T-54 is a premium that is faster, it gets better armor, it gets the same vision. Let's have a look at the gun statistics as well. So the Cobra T-54, it gets 360 alpha damage. It gets arguably the exact same penetration other than on its premium rounds, which are 275, which are more than enough if you know the weak points of vehicles to go through. So I mean, the T-54E1 has the advantage in terms of being able to just auto-aim things and pen, but I mean, really you should be aiming fully with the vehicle anyway. But regardless, this tank does have slightly lower penetration, so maybe that's a very, very, very minor negative of the vehicle. But remember, the actual standard pen is pretty much the same. You lose 8mm on this compared to the Tech Tree version. But what about the gun statistics? Well, you can see here 0.23 accuracy, 2.44 second aim time, 4 shots per clip, 2 second intra-clip reload, which is exactly the same. So pretty much the same sort of vehicle. You remember that the DPM of the T54E1 was indeed 2,600. And this is 2,800, so it's got more DPM as well. It's also got a more reliable gun because it's a 360 alpha damage gun, 4-shot autoloader, so you've got slightly less alpha in the entire clip, but this thing is fast enough to maneuver itself and also use the intra-clip reload absolutely fine as well, and relocate to be able to burst someone else when you've fully reloaded the vehicle as well. So yeah, the Cobra T54, basically a way better version of the Tech Tree vehicle that was faster, so it was actually the same sort of base speed as the Cobra T54, but of course it gets the overdrive, which means it can go about 65 kilometers an hour, and a heavy tank in quotation marks that has more armor than the actual heavy tank that goes 38 kilometers an hour has more DPM than the Tech Tree version. It has basically the same sort of penetration on the standard round, slightly lower. It's got slightly lower alpha damage. It has minusculely lower hit points, and has the same view range and basically a slightly higher still concealment. But I mean, why the hell would you play the T54E1? And don't the T54E1 was actually slightly different before it was nerfed, so effectively it had the concealment, well, it was basically a medium tank, essentially, is what they called it. It still is a medium tank, to be honest with you. You're not bouncing any rounds in this thing ever. Literally, I played maybe 7 games, something in that region. Didn't really bounce a single round. I mean, you might see a few, but we've got 2 gameplays that I want to showcase what this tank is actually like, and then you can compare it to my video on the T54 Cobra if you want to actually see the difference between the two and how OP the Cobra is compared to a tank that is basically probably very well balanced to very mediocre, that really did not need a nerf and a change from being a medium to a heavy, and give it basically worse everything except from slightly better armor that literally is not even good enough to bounce any rounds anyway, so there was no need to give it any more armor because it makes absolutely jack all of a difference. So let's have a look at the gameplay. Let me showcase 2 gameplays that are actually okay and give you some feedback as to what the T54E1 is actually like. So the best gameplay that I did have over those 7 games roughly that I played in this vehicle, I played a ton before it was buffed or nerfed, whatever you want to call it. It's definitely not a buff, it's definitely a nerf to a tank that was pretty awful. But regardless, I know we talked a lot about the statistics, I know we compared it a lot, and basically it was a bit of a rant in terms of how the vehicle has been changed, and then you compare it to some of the recent things, and it's just like, why did Wargaming do this? I have no idea. I'm pretty sure they have no idea, but you know what it is. And the key thing I have a problem with this vehicle is, like, they've made it so slow to the point where, like, why on earth would you play this over something that is slightly faster? Why would you play it over a lot of vehicles, to be honest with you? You look at this and compare it to something else, even the T77, which is a tier lower, that is basically the same tank except it gets slightly less alpha essentially, so you can't do what, like 14 or 1560 alpha damage in one singular clip, which in this vehicle is actually kind of hard because the dispersion values that they've made worse makes it a little bit harder to reliably hit your shells every single time, so you may end up only dealing 2 shells worth of damage. That's not the worst thing, you know, you can still make it work. I can guarantee you will still have times where you can fully clip someone for 1600 alpha, but you're seeing here, we did actually bounce 1 round in this game, which is, you know, good. We then also hit 3 in that clip, so you can see it can kick out quite a bit of damage. But remember, like, how often are you able to just sit in front of opponents and deal 3 shells worth of damage, sit in front of them for 4 seconds, which gives your opponents enough time to be able to pull out, aim at you, deal damage to you. And yes, you may have done, I don't know, like you're seeing here, like 1400 damage in that like one engagement. But the problem that you have is that it's not consistent because the armor model is pretty trash. We bounce a second round, and then you're seeing here just the armor model holding up to its heavy name. And yeah, you're just seeing every single round basically penetrate. The hull armor is where people were actually shooting at in this game, so we were getting penned straight through the hull, and we were also getting penned in the turret as well. But that's just a given. I mean, it's the same as the 57 Heavy essentially in terms of the turret armor being pretty trash, but the 57 Heavy at least has enough armor on the turret to bounce at least maybe a few rounds. This tank just basically gets penned by tier 7 vehicles with standard ammunition, so it's not like they're having to even premium spam the turret of this thing, but you know, you can still make it work. I'm not saying that this tank is the worst tank in the game and it's absolutely useless and no one will ever be able to have a good game, because you're seeing here, you know, 2700 damage in a tier 9 is not awful. It's probably maybe the average at tier 9 probably for a game, but it's kind of, it's very difficult to reliably be able to push the damage numbers higher in this vehicle because of the fact that you are limited so much now by the mobility of the tank and also the gun handling and also just the general feel of the vehicle to be able to kind of push forward and have these like really good games. And I think that that's what was lost with this kind of nerf, I guess, to this vehicle. And I'm hoping that Wargaming will kind of revisit this tank, give it a little bit more speed, or just basically say, you know what, maybe we nerfed the speed way too much. Maybe we should give it a little bit more speed to kind of come in line with something like the Cobra T54, because that is a direct comparison. They are both tier 9 American auto-loading heavy tanks, and the T54 just blows this tank completely out of the water when it comes to being the better vehicle. And that's kind of where I really don't like tanks like this, or at least Wargaming nerfing or changing tanks like this. There was no need, to be honest with you. The tank was already pretty bad, and so making these weird changes that you're supposedly making the armor better is just, it's a fallacy. It doesn't actually do anything to the vehicle, if not just makes it worse. So that's kind of what this whole video was aimed at, and I'm hoping that you guys get a good understanding of what's changed and why I'm making this video. It's not necessarily to showcase a review of this vehicle, but my whole review of the vehicle is that it's just mediocre. It's absolutely useless in probably 90% of scenarios, because remember is that if you expose yourself too much, and yes, you may deal 1500 damage, but as soon as you've unloaded your clip, you're basically a sitting duck anyway, so it doesn't really matter, whole deal. And so you'll just get penned every single time. You'll end up basically being in a position where they'll know that you're reloading, so they just farm you of all the damage. That can be said for every single autoloader in the game, but this one truly has no armor, so you can't even rely on that at all, which is something that I didn't enjoy about playing these vehicles. I think the other thing about this is that you just kind of limited so much by, yeah, just in general everything. I mean, it's just a terrible tank. I'm sure that anyone that has ever played the T54 E1 before it was nerfed already knew that it wasn't great. So with all of these nerfs and the changes that they've made to it, it's only got worse, which, yeah, it's just not good. It's not good at all, and I'm hoping that Wargaming kind of revisit and go, yeah, maybe we did make this tank a little bit too weak or whatever it might be. And of course we get snapshotted by the Scourge at the end, having only dealt 4620 damage in the best game that I managed to have in the vehicle. Granted, maybe I wasn't playing to the best of my ability throughout all of the games, which might be a factor in it. You know, it's not always the actual machine, it's sometimes the actual person playing it, but at the end of the day, I've played a lot of games of World of Tanks, and I've played a lot of tanks, and even making the direct comparison between other vehicles, it's like, why would you play this thing over the Cobra T54 unless you literally just wanted the T57 Heavy tank, which is one of my favourite heavies. And considering that, I absolutely hate this thing, and I have no idea why Wargaming even remotely changed it to try and balance the vehicle. Yeah, I have no idea, but of course leave your comments in the comment section down below. I don't want to waffle on too much about this vehicle. I'm pretty sure you get a good overview. It's basically a T57 Heavy that's slower and doesn't have the alpha damage, doesn't have the gun statistics, and has way worse armor and slower. So yeah, I don't know. You guys make up what you think of it, but yeah, I'll be interested to see what you say. Other than that, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I hope you join me in the next video coming soon. Goodbye.